What kind of animals hatch from eggs, but can gallop like a horse or swim across an ocean? The same animals that can go a year between meals and live for a century, and who have patiently watched as the dinosaurs have come and gone. Few diseases, it seems, can touch them, and with hearts the most advanced of any animal on Earth, they hold the key to critical scientific advance. High-performance predators, they remain still masters of their domain. A river in northern Australia. The trees and bushes along its banks are home to a noisy colony of fruit bats. It's the wet season and the water is high. But the bats are too busy hanging out to notice any danger below. Enter nature's supreme opportunist, the saltwater crocodile. A quarter-mile downwind, the smell and the clamor have attracted its attention. Guidance systems lock on. Under cover of water, it can approach unseen. Like a U-boat in enemy waters, it surfaces without a ripple. And while the bats chatter, the croc can pick off its target. Part submarine, part jump jet, a powerful tail of solid muscle can launch it 6 feet in the air. Mission accomplished. These are the world's largest reptilian predators, sometimes weighing in at over a ton. Their state-of-the-art design has needed few modifications in nearly 250 million years. In the water, a vanishing act leaves only a highly sensitive periscope above the surface. Eyes that see by night as well as day can watch your every move. Hidden ears are listening in, while barely exposed nostrils complete the surveillance above deck. But this is the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface, this motionless predator is alert to movement, sensing vibration in the water through its skin. When it's time to dive, the hatches close. A flap at the back of the mouth seals the throat and air passages. Ears and nostrils go into shutdown, and a see-through membrane wipes over the eyes. Stealth hunters from the water, they have infiltrated the swamps and rivers of every warm land mass on the planet. Collectively, they are known as crocodilians, and today there are over 20 distinct species. Alligators abound in the U.S., while their close cousins, caimans, reach south as far as Argentina. The cosmopolitan crocodiles are more widely spread, from the Americas to Africa, from tropical Asia into the Pacific. Indeed, the only gator outside America is a long-lost cousin in China. The crocodilians are descended from a lineage that branched away from other reptiles early in evolutionary history. It was a lineage that spawned not only the crocodilians, but which also gave rise both to dinosaurs and to some more surprising cousins, birds. So despite a superficial resemblance to lizards, a crocodile is more closely related to a goose. But there's nothing bird-like about a croc's feeding gear. In a life that can span 100 years, it will wear through several thousand teeth. With 60 plus to a mouth, a croc can nail just about anything. Powerful jaws are tools for biting, with a force of several tons. Yet with very little opening leverage, they can be held shut with a sturdy rubber band. The alligator is the consummate crushing machine, its broad, rounded snout ideal for cracking turtles or crabs. For most crocodiles, though, narrower, pointed jaws are better suited to a highly varied diet, from tiny prawns to hefty wildebeest. The difference, though, is more than a matter of shape. Unlike alligators, crocodiles are adapted to survive at sea. Glands in the tongue shed excess salt, keeping body fluids in balance. Crocodiles can cruise around coastlines in search of new rivers, but a few go further. Saltwater crocodiles are truly Olympic swimmers, sometimes making epic journeys of hundreds of miles to reach remote oceanic islands. Neither croc nor alligator, a strange creature basks on the banks of an Indian river, a gharial. With its ugly, bulbous nose, the male can grow to nearly 20 feet. But he is harmless to humans. Rapier jaws, set with needle-sharp teeth, make lethal weapons for snatching slippery fish, and a gharial eats little else. 90 days under warm sand, and a gharial's eggs have hatched into a noisy family. Curiously, the sex of crocodiles depends not on their genes, but on temperature. Keep it moderate during incubation, and you'll breed daughters. For males, let's say some like it hot. But not too hot. In nests that overheat, the hatchlings are baked into grotesque shapes. The Luangwa River, Zambia. The past 20-odd million years have brought an ever-changing menu to the resident crocodiles. Not always in manageable portions, or easy to pluck from the bank. Even in the water, it can be difficult to make a meal of it. These are Nile crocodiles, and despite their name, they can be found throughout the river systems and swamps of tropical Africa. It is late October, and the dry season is wearing on. Thirsty animals have no choice but to take their chances at the water's edge. Sticky mud can turn a quick drink into a hair-raising gauntlet. From point-blank range, it can strike at 20 miles an hour. Cheated by a hair's breadth. But this is a river swimming with opportunities. Wise to the danger, their mother has sounded the alarm. An old hippo lies dying in shallow water. He may be starving to death, but he's not the only one who's hungry. But even a dying hippo has a lethal bite, and for the famished lion, it's better to wait. As twilight descends, the heat lifts and cool breezes begin to stir. While most reptiles are active only by day, crocodiles don't stop when the sun goes down. The night breeze wafts a stench of rotting flesh and the promise of a feast. It's the end for the old hippo, and hungry animals gather on the banks. But the water is strictly off limits. This is one for the crocs, and they won't be pussyfooting around. Perhaps it looks greedy, but a crocodile eats in surprisingly dainty portions. Its stomach is not much bigger than a human head. Morning, and the crocodiles have one thing on their mind. Their bellies may be full, but to digest their meal, they must first turn up the oven. Like all reptiles, they're only up to speed when they're warm. Food will literally rot inside a cold croc. So for once, sunbathing really is the healthy option. While a croc relaxes, hidden structures within its back are busy gathering heat. This is a basking alligator, as the human eye sees it. But a heat-sensitive camera reveals something more. Built-in solar panels deployed along its back. Raised bumps glow warmer than the rest of the body. For these miniature peaks are trapping the sun's warmth. Each incorporates a bony disc laced with tiny blood vessels. Heat is absorbed through the skin and downloaded into the bloodstream. Maximum comfort for most crocodilians is somewhere around 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Much hotter, and they simply move to shade or water. By shifting between cool water and a warm riverbank, they can control body temperature to within a few degrees. It's old-fashioned to call them cold-blooded. Crocodilians, we now know, are adept at keeping warm. And their efficient use of solar power hands them a winning advantage over other animals. Rain or shine, birds and mammals warm their bodies from the inside by burning fuel. It's a passport to cold climates, yet they must work busily to keep the furnaces stoked. Pound for pound, a bird uses over 20 times more energy than a croc and guzzles up to 50 times more food. To a basking gator, a bird's life must seem one long feeding frenzy. By drawing free heat from the sun, the gator's food needs are slashed. Large crocs can even cruise on their fat stores for a year. These guys were eco-friendly long before it was fashionable. Little wonder then that they seem so laid back. They're playing a waiting game that would kill the rest of us. However, don't be taken in by the casual air. Crocs can erupt with awesome power. On land, they can also plod for miles, seeking water if their home creek dries up. Here they move more with the high four-legged walk of a mammal than the sprawl or slither of a reptile. Yet this advanced formula movement is neither mammal nor reptile. It's unique to the croc, and it's a tale in two parts. A croc's armored skin makes a rugged flak jacket, but it also plays a surprising structural role.
When we started to dissect this animal, we found that removing this segment of skin was really difficult because all the muscles running down the back are attached directly to the underside of the armor. And you can see that better from underneath on this segment. Each segment of muscle runs in a different direction. And what this means is that when they contract, they brace the armor against the backbone.
But his versatile armor is more than just an anchor plate for muscles. It's the key to movement. Gravity pulls us all down. To keep from sagging, an animal like a cow has muscles that spring the backbone. In crocodiles, though, the muscles operate differently.
If muscles bulge, they expand, but in the case of crocodilians, they are contained in a sort of tube, which is formed by armor and the backbone. And this system can be compared to a hose running alongside the body, which is filled with water. And like a hose which is turned on, the whole body is stiffened by the inner pressure of the bulging muscles.
So crocodiles use a unique lifting system that exploits hydraulic pressure. And with body raised, they can do better than just walk. Wild tales aside, no crocodile living today will run you down for dinner. Yet this is just how crocodiles began their evolutionary career over 200 million years ago. Small prototype species, no more than a few feet long, would indeed have run down their prey. Later designs even incorporated stubby, hoof-like toes. These bounding crocs must have been predators from hell. Yet it was the long jaws and low profile of the sit-and-wait hunter lurking at the water's edge that proved the winning design. It's a formula that has been used by many different forms. Like this colossal Purosaurus, a 35-foot caiman with a bucket-sized nostril on its snout. But imagine the ultimate, a crocodile the size of Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was a Terminator with box office dimensions, a dinosaur killer. From the tidal swamps of Mississippi, Deinosuchus was 7 tons of pure predator. Another 70 million years of evolution. And while the cast of characters has changed, the plot has remained exactly the same. Croc biologist Dr. Graham Webb has the scars to prove it.
Crocs, as far as we know, don't do much feeding underwater. Well, they're not the sort of animals that go diving down the bottom, swimming around, plucking up daisies from the rocks. They're basically a water's edge predator. They're designed to feed right on the water's edge, especially these guys. So they're not chasing fish, grabbing things. They're cornering things.
So how does the croc get its man?
Human attacks are usually like classic feeding attacks are an animal that's hunting, not just sitting there and waiting. With a human in a croc, it's usually something visual or something in the water splashing, the sounds carry through the water. One of the first steps of the croc will be, when they hear something like that, is to orient at it. They'll just turn their head like this and just turn it around and face it at where that person is, usually on the edge or something. They might be 50, 100 metres away.
No problem. With eyes angled forwards, The croc has an overlapping view of its target that enables it to calculate an accurate range.
The croc itself will dive and swim over underwater and come up, bang, right in front, probably a metre out from where that person is. I've had it happen to me. I tell you, it's quite frightening, you know, because all you see is this great yellow mouth with all these teeth. A big thing like this opens its mouth like this and it's coming at you, you know, and you're sitting up here facing it. Yeah, it's a pretty sobering experience, you know.
No tooth marks here. This is a heart bypass operation, and for many it's high-risk surgery, a last resort. But some so-called primitive animals are about to help us. If only we could learn a little more about their amazing hearts. The arteries that nourish our hearts can become critically blocked. Only a bypass can save us. Scientists are now probing the alligator's heart because, in effect, it can bypass its own arteries. Mimic this remarkable feat, and we could surely save more human hearts. The crocodilians, in fact, appear to have the world's most advanced hearts. They've been a zoological mystery for over a century, but now, at last, we're beginning to discover their amazing secrets. Like our own hearts, an alligator's is split down the middle. One side pumps blood to the lungs, where it picks up fresh oxygen. The other side receives the oxygenated blood and sends it round the body. So far, so good. The trick comes when the gator dives and can't refill its lungs. By adjusting a unique set of valves, the heart diverts blood away from the lungs and recycles it straight to the brain and other vital organs. Neat, but it's only half the story. The blood itself has an amazing capacity to release oxygen, far more of it than the blood of other diving animals. Underwater, the gator can also phase out blood supply to its muscles, wind down its heart to 1 or 2 beats a minute, and simply wait. In standby mode, it could lurk here for a couple of hours. But seconds after it draws breath, the heart is back to speed, restoring normal service to the lungs and muscles. These animals are superbly adapted for swimming. Forward thrust provided by the powerful tail. Legs streamlined to the body. Buoyancy and posture adjusted via air supply to the lungs. For sheer grace and economy, there can be few better swimmers. From the tales of early European explorers, it seems Florida's swamps once shook with the sounds of giant reptiles. The earth and the waters, wrote one, trembled with their thunder, and clouds of vapor rose from their dilated nostrils. Such descriptions sound fanciful to our modern scientific ears. We couldn't be more wrong.
Most reptiles don't produce much sound. Obviously, we all know snakes hiss, but crocodilians have the most complex vocal behaviors of any reptile group. And alligators are really about the most vocal of all the crocodilians. Even from within the egg, young animals will chirp, but as adults, these animals are really vocal. In the spring months, during the courtship season, alligators produce these deep, roaring vocalizations, and the bellowing of one individual stimulates others to bellow. It's a contagious behavior.
Alligator biologist Dr. Kent Vliet is listening to a conversation subtler than it sounds. In dense swamps with low visibility, noise can be the best way to communicate. But there's more to these prehistoric tremors than meets the ear. Crocodilians are especially tuned in to low frequencies, tuned in and turned on. For an amorous female gator, a bass rumble in B-flat is apparently irresistible. But how can she be sure it's a male? Every mating game has its codes of conduct, and cracking them requires some sophisticated eavesdropping.
As we began to study the behavior of these animals in more detail, we saw this visual display immediately before the audible bellow, which we refer to as a water dance. The water is driven up off the back of the animal. And we know now that that is produced by very intense, low-frequency sounds from deep within the body of the animal, sounds that are below human levels of hearing.
But sensed by the hydrophone, these subaudible sounds are revealed as potent bursts of energy. It's a signal produced only by the male, and it has a powerful effect.
Very frequently I've seen females actually quit bellowing and move over and rest their chin on bellowing males, close their eyes, and you can tell they're just feeling these infrasonic vibrations move through their body. This stimulates the females into courting. If anything turns on a female alligator, it's this infrasound of male. During courtship, when they're very close to one another, alligators produce a really charming little soft flutter, almost like a cat purring. I think there's much more we will learn in the future about acoustic communication among crocodilians. They seem to be using a wide repertoire of sounds. There's a complexity of vocal communication that we still don't understand.
Learning more about crocodiles in the wild presents its own special challenges. Heavy commuter traffic? Well, it's hardly gridlock out here. But crocs do live in dense, waterlogged country that's tough to penetrate. They are elusive and wary of contact. And of course, if you do get close, they're liable to leave their mark. In Australia's northern wetlands, crocodile bites come in two distinct sizes, saltwater size and freshwater size. Sometime within the last 1,000,000 years, saltwater crocs have moved upriver and spawned a smaller freshwater cousin, the new kid on the block. Dry season and the freshies have crowded into small pools of remaining water. Narrow jaws and sharp teeth are classic tools of the fish eater, though a man's arm isn't completely safe. But compare him with a saltwater croc, and he's a mere baby, tipping the scales at only 1/10 the weight.
15.1.
Crocs can't really chew their food. They give it an acid bath instead. With digestive juices of concentrated hydrochloric acid, you'll be lucky to find any leftovers.
See all that's in his stones.
To break it down, food is also put through the mill. Pebbles are deliberately swallowed and kept in the stomach, making efficient do-it-yourself grinders. For crocs, there's no place like home. Released with a radio transmitter 20 miles from its usual hangout, this freshie will soon find its way back. Perhaps through a magnetic sense, like a homing pigeon. Perhaps even by navigating from the sun. Surviving its first year is a crocodile's toughest hurdle. On its own, the odds are slim. But most crocodile mothers are remarkably diligent parents and help to give their young a fighting chance. From the day she lays her clutch of about 50 eggs, a saltwater crocodile guards her nest day and night. For 2 months, her brood has been incubating in a mound of rotting vegetation. And now the call of tiny crocodiles fills the air. Instinctively, she is drawn onto the mound, where the sound rivets her attention. She responds by opening the nest. Her movements alone are enough to stimulate hatching in the eggs beneath. And the calls of the young themselves will encourage others to emerge, triggering a mass breakout. The swelling chorus fires her maternal instincts. And using her powerful jaws with exquisite delicacy, she ferries her young to the water. Here, the gang will stick together, forming a creche under mother's watchful eye. They keep in touch with tiny grunts. They'll be safer if they stick together. Undefended nests and young, though, are sitting targets. For once, the hunter turns hunted. Monitor lizards comb the banks, picking off hatchlings. They can wipe out whole colonies of nests in no time. To survive, the hatchlings must find cover quickly. But where is safe? Aerial bombardment from kites and eagles is a constant threat. a narrow escape. But it's not over yet. To a hatchling, a barramundi is like a great white shark. In the first year, 9 out of every 10 hatchlings will die. And the chief executioner? Believe it or not, it's the enemy within. Adult crocs of both species prey ruthlessly on the young of others. When the numbers are finally crunched, the survival rate is less than 1%. It's cannibalism on a huge scale. Yet in northern Australia's vast wetlands, crocodiles are flourishing. Heavily hunted up to the 1970s, their numbers had sharply dwindled. But ironically, the very scarcity of marauding adults has allowed new generations of crocs to survive and mature unmolested. They are the most tenacious of survivors. Even scientists have been surprised by their ability to bounce back. But with so many crocs around, there's a growing risk of attacks on humans.
We have a lot of sharks in Australia too, but you can swim in areas where there's sharks without a problem, really. Crocodiles is different. If you wanted to commit suicide, you would just go down to the Adelaide River, right on the edge of Darwin, and go swimming. And there's a 100% chance you're not going to make it. We don't lose many people up here because most people up here are in fact very well educated about crocs and they don't take the risks. But there's no doubt that in some of those rivers you would just never make it if you tried to swim in them. You'd never make it.
When people don't make it, they make big news, and they fuel our deepest nightmares. Of course, it's only dummies who linger at the water's edge. But can we help but wonder?
I've often asked people that have been badly grabbed if they had a handgun, could they have done something? The answer's always been yes. If they had something they can reach to do something definitively, they could, while they're being rolled or thrashed, they could do it. But if you haven't got something like a handgun, there's not a lot you can do. What are you going to do? You know, they're not Bambi. You know, you can't sit down and have a conversation with them. You know, they're a predator, and when they go, they're going to get whatever they're going for, and their object is to thrash it and kill it and as quick as they can.
Elsewhere in the world, people are making a living from dangerous waters. In Africa, a bad year sees hundreds grabbed by Nile crocodiles. That which terrifies us inspires respect, even reverence. And no one, it would seem, has worshipped crocodiles so devoutly as the ancient Egyptians. They bowed down before their crocodile god Sobek, and they nurtured crocodiles with lavish care and ritual. When their crocodiles died, they were preserved for life everlasting. And yet, by a strange twist of fate, it is they who have brought the ancients back to life.
At the turn of the century, there was an archaeological excavation in the South Fayum. They were excavating a cemetery, and the workmen, of course, hoped that in the cemetery they would find precious objects. Gold was what workmen always hoped for. When one of the sarcophagi was opened, what they found was not gold, was not even human mummies, but crocodile mummies. The workman lifted his spade with anger and brought it down on the crocodile. And what was inside? Ancient paper had been used to stuff and to form the casing of this crocodile. And from putting it together again and reading it, we're able to rewrite the history of this period.
And for historian Dr. Dorothy Thompson, these hidden archives have brought one aspect of ancient Egypt in particular vividly into focus.
In later times, when the Romans ruled the country, they made quite a business of showing the crocodiles to visitors. They were dressed up on special feast days with jewels and with all kinds of adornments, and they might be fed cakes, cookies, a special drink of wine and honey. And we hear about the priests actually opening the jaws of the crocodile to force the food down. So I think sometimes the crocodiles must have been overfed by the rather enthusiastic tourists.
Another 2,000 years of human culture, and crocodiles are as popular as ever. It's dinner time for the gators, and there are still plenty of devotees.
Crocodile, turn the head over here. Come on, louder, folks, make a bunch of noise. He's gonna try it. He's gonna try it. And Alright, we got 2 for 1 on that try that time. Now, folks, I'll tell you what, when they get something in the mouth like these chickens, you may know you gotta take a while.
Crocodiles have commercial clout. The ancients knew this over 2,000 years ago, and today, it's their economic value that's at the heart of conservation programs aimed at putting them back on the map. Hunting them for their skins may once have driven them close to extinction, but alligators and many crocodiles are now thriving again, thanks to a leather industry worth millions of dollars. Oddly, perhaps, buying a legally produced handbag made from crocodile hide is one of the best ways to ensure that these amazing animals continue, if not to endear, then at least to endure. In one shape or another, crocodiles have been dominant predators from way back before the dinosaurs. What is the key to such an unbroken supremacy?
When they're in the water, they can breathe, they can smell, they can see, and they can hear. So when they come up to the water's edge, most things think, well, what's this little, rock pad or something that's in the water? They've got no way of assessing the size of the animal that then comes launching out. Which other animals can do that? Not very many. See, not many animals actually show 100th of themselves and then suddenly pounce on their prey with their full size. And that's what these animals do, and that's, I think, why they've been so successful. This design has been so successful for, a couple 100 million years.
It's anyone's guess how the crocodiles might adapt to the next 100 million years. But one thing's for sure, these animals are not the disappearing kind. And for the foreseeable future, there are no serious contenders for the croc's heavyweight title, King of the Swamp. Cover of water it can approach unseen. Like a U-boat in enemy waters, it surfaces without a ripple. And while the bats chatter, the croc can pick off its target. Part submarine, part jump jet, a powerful tail of solid muscle can launch it 6 feet in the air. Mission accomplished. These are the world's largest reptilian predators, sometimes weighing in at over a ton. Their state-of-the-art design has needed few modifications in nearly 250 million years. In the water, a vanishing act leaves only a highly sensitive periscope above the surface. Eyes that see by night as well as day can watch your every move. What kind of animals hatch from eggs, but can gallop like a horse or swim across an ocean? The same animals that can go a year between meals and live for a century, and who have patiently watched as the dinosaurs have come and gone. Few diseases, it seems, can touch them, and with hearts the most advanced of any animal on Earth, they hold the key to critical scientific advance. High-performance predators, they remain still masters of their domain. A river in northern Australia. The trees and bushes along its banks are home to a noisy colony of fruit bats. It's the wet season and the water is high. But the bats are too busy hanging out to notice any danger below. enter nature's supreme opportunist, the saltwater crocodile. A quarter-mile downwind, the smell and the clamor have attracted its attention. Guidance systems lock on. That branched away from other reptiles early in evolutionary history. It was a lineage that spawned not only the crocodilians, but which also gave rise both to dinosaurs and to some more surprising cousins, birds. So despite a superficial resemblance to lizards, a crocodile is more closely related to a goose. But there's nothing bird-like about a croc's feeding gear. In a life that can span 100 years, it will wear through several thousand teeth. With 60 plus to a mouth, a croc can nail just about anything. Hidden ears are listening in, while barely exposed nostrils complete the surveillance above deck. But this is the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface, this motionless predator is alert to movement, sensing vibration in the water through its skin. When it's time to dive, the hatches close. A flap at the back of the mouth seals the throat and air passages. Ears and nostrils go into shutdown, and a see-through membrane wipes over the eyes. Stealth hunters from the water, they have infiltrated the swamps and rivers of every warm land mass on the planet. Collectively, they are known as crocodilians, and today there are over 20 distinct species. Alligators abound in the U.S., while their close cousins, caimans, reach south as far as Argentina. The cosmopolitan crocodiles are more widely spread, from the Americas to Africa, from tropical Asia into the Pacific. Indeed, the only gator outside America is a long-lost cousin in China. The crocodilians are descended from a lineage